When Melania Trump filed a lawsuit against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, few expected it to erupt into a national reckoning. But everything changed in under 10 seconds when a single witness revealed a truth no one was prepared for. The moment the headline hit, it felt as if Washington itself had shifted. First Lady Melania Trump sues Representative Jasmine Crockett for defamation. This wasn't gossip. It wasn't political rumor. It was a real legal filing, stamped with Melania Trump's name at the top. For many Americans, the question wasn't whether this would cause backlash. It was how explosive that backlash would become. A former First Lady, long known for staying above the fray, had stepped directly into the arena, dragging a rising Democratic firebrand into court. Cameras were inevitable. So were the crowds, the pundits, and the endless cable news speculation. But what truly stunned people was what this case wasn't about. It wasn't legislation. It wasn't elections. It was about words. Words spoken by Jasmine Crockett, sharp, direct, and unapologetic, that Melania's legal team claimed crossed the line into defamation. In an era where every sentence can be clipped, replayed, and weaponized, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The Dallas courthouse became ground zero. The morning air was thick with Texas heat, but that didn't stop the crowds. Protesters with handwritten signs stood shoulder to shoulder with Trump supporters wrapped in flags. Reporters leaned over barricades, firing questions at anyone in a suit. On the corner, a local woman clutching an iced coffee whispered, "This feels bigger than a trial. It feels like history." Inside, the courtroom felt heavy. Wooden benches were packed with journalists, legal analysts, and citizens who had squeezed in early. At the front sat two women whose paths could not have been more different. Melania Trump, elegant, composed, every movement deliberate. Jasmine Crockett, fiery, unfiltered, her stare daring anyone to try to quiet her. Mrs. Trump versus Representative Jasmine Crockett, the clerk announced. The words echoed through the room. Every head turned. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a collision of legacies. To understand why this moment mattered, you have to understand who Jasmine Crockett is. She doesn't tiptoe. A freshman congresswoman from Texas, she built her reputation on confrontation, challenging power, grilling opponents, and speaking for communities that felt invisible in Washington. She doesn't whisper, she projects. That's what made her rise fast, and what made her dangerous to those accustomed to silence. Melania's legal team argued Crockett's remarks weren't political rhetoric. They claimed she implied wrongdoing, suggestions about financial dealings serious enough to damage reputation and justify legal action. To Melania's supporters, the lawsuit was about dignity and boundaries. To Crockett's allies, it looked like an attempt to silence a voice that had rattled the establishment. Cameras flashed as attorneys entered. Reporters scribbled furiously. Every detail was dissected. The color of Melania's dress, the tilt of Crockett's chin, the way each woman sat. Because everyone understood this case wasn't confined to the courtroom. It was about image, power, and narrative. Crockett leaned toward her attorney and whispered. A nod followed. Melania didn't move. Her face revealed nothing, but her grip tightened around the pen in her hand. They weren't just separated by ideology, they were separated by philosophy. Melania, controlled, carefully curated. Silence used as armor. Crockett, bold, defiant, her very presence a challenge to authority. Within minutes, one thing became clear. No matter the verdict, this trial would leave scars. Reputations would be tested, questions would linger, and the nation would be watching for the moment everything cracked. Outside, the noise grew louder. Supporters shouted, critics fired back, police lined the steps to keep tensions from boiling over. But inside the courtroom, the silence between arguments carried more weight than the chaos outside. This wasn't just a lawsuit. It was truth versus perception, courage versus control, and the dangerous gamble of dragging words into a courtroom. Before a single argument was made, people were already asking the same question: who would walk away standing taller, and whose legacy would leave fractured beyond repair? To understand how it came to this, you have to look beyond the headlines and understand the woman at the center of the storm. Before Congress, Jasmine Crockett built her name in Dallas courtrooms, defending people without money, power, or protection. She was the attorney who took late-night calls from terrified parents and worried workers. In those neighborhoods, she wasn't just an attorney, she was an ally. Jasmine never walked away from a hard case, recalled Andre Phillips, a local activist who worked alongside her. She wasn't scared of judges or prosecutors. She believed in telling the truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. That blunt honesty carried her from local advocacy to Washington. Critics thought she'd soften once she arrived. She didn't. Her voice only grew louder on committee floors, in interviews, across social media. When someone tried to dismiss her, she pushed back. When someone tried to silence her, she doubled down. That refusal to conform made her a target. Lobbyists bristled. Career politicians scoffed. Conservative media labeled her reckless, while progressives praised her as fearless. Through it all, Jasmine Crockett remained unmoved. So when she made comments touching on Melania Trump's role during the Trump era, the boldness wasn't surprising. What was surprising was the response. Instead of ignoring it, Melania Trump chose confrontation. As one reporter asked on a morning show that week, out of all the critics the Trump family has faced, why Jasmine Crockett? That question lingered because Jasmine Crockett wasn't the most famous name in Congress, nor the most powerful. She didn't chair a committee, she wasn't launching a presidential run. Yet somehow she had struck a nerve deep enough that the former First Lady of the United States decided to take her to court. Part of it was Crockett's fearlessness. She wasn't someone who could be intimidated into silence. Lawsuits didn't rattle her, they energized her. Pressure didn't slow her down, it sharpened her. And that was dangerous for someone like Melania Trump, whose public image had long been built on control, elegance, and distance from controversy. Jasmine was her opposite, raw, blunt, and unapologetic. There was also symbolism. For millions watching, this wasn't simply a legal dispute between two women. It felt like a collision between two Americas. On one side stood a congresswoman from modest beginnings who fought her way through law school and built her career on being unfiltered. On the other stood a former First Lady with global recognition, a name synonymous with wealth, power, and a carefully curated mystique. When the lawsuit became public, Jasmine didn't retreat. She leaned in. Standing outside her district office in Dallas, she faced reporters head-on. If speaking the truth about power lands me in court, then that's exactly where I'm supposed to be. I don't run, I don't hide. Those words played on a loop across cable news. Supporters praised her courage. Critics called it arrogance. But no one disputed one thing: Jasmine Crockett wasn't scared. That fearlessness was the key. It was what made her compelling to supporters, threatening to opponents, and what made this lawsuit into something bigger than legal paperwork. It became a test. Could someone who had built her identity on speaking truth to power survive a direct strike from one of the most powerful figures in the country? Behind the scenes, the strain was visible. Her staff saw it. Late nights in her office, towers of legal briefs stacked across her desk, Jasmine rubbing her temples, staring at documents long after the lights should have been off. "They want to break me," she admitted quietly to one aide. "But if I bend now, I'll never be able to stand up again." For Jasmine, this wasn't just about clearing her name. It was about survival, political and personal. If she lost, she risked being branded reckless forever. If she won, she would prove that even the highest circles of power couldn't silence her. But while Jasmine's defiance dominated headlines, a deeper question lingered beneath the noise. What drove Melania Trump to take this risk in the first place? For years, Melania had built a reputation on restraint. While her husband commanded attention and thrived in controversy, she remained largely silent. Her appearances were rare, her words carefully chosen, her image meticulously controlled. That's why the lawsuit stunned so many. It wasn't just unusual, it was historic. No modern First Lady had ever sued a sitting member of Congress for defamation. So why now? Why Crockett? Behind the polished exterior, Melania's world had always been more fragile than it appeared. Being First Lady meant relentless scrutiny, motives questioned, personal history dissected. While she maintained a sense of distance, Crockett's remarks cut through that armor. According to Melania's legal team, the Congresswoman's statements crossed a line. They argued Crockett had implied involvement in behind-the-scenes dealings, suggestions that could permanently damage Melania's reputation. To Melania's supporters, the lawsuit was about dignity and boundaries. To Crockett,